welcome. It is Trader Chat with Johnny Ward and Flynn Goward. As you can see, I'm dressed for the weather. It is very, very cold in Dublin, but it was hot in the Star Sports trading room over the weekend. Flynn, you were positively despondent in this chair 7 days ago. The firm had been absolutely battered over the weekend across the sports, but starting with racing this week, this was much, much better. Star Sports took on Politologue, as did the winner halfway through the race, and you got a result.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very different Flynn Goward sitting here compared to the one last week, Johnny. I was very despondent last week, as you just said, whereas I'm a bit more jubilant, I'd say, this week. It was a very good weekend for us, a very, very busy weekend, and there's only one place to start, and like you said, that is the Clarence House. It was the biggest race of the day for punters and by far the biggest race of the day for us. We laid Politologue for chunks. He was a solid six-figure loser in the book. For us, so a real big loser. There was no coming back for us if he was to go and win. We laid that at 11-8 for Politologue. The Paul Nicholls obviously favourite. There was a sublime ride from David Bass, I thought, on first flight. One of the best rides I'd say I've probably ever seen to actually take him on halfway throughout the race. The easy play would have probably been just to go from the front with Politologue, but instead he decided to wait and then take him on halfway through. And because of that ride, we managed to keep the money, which was really good for us. And like I say, it would have been a long way back. And to be honest, there was no way of us coming back if Politologue were to win that race.
Can I ask you, how does it happen that you decide to take on a horse, albeit like it's a Grade 1 race, the big race of the day? It's you're not laying a 0-60 here on the flat or whatever. But what happens that Star Sports decides on Saturday we're going to take Politologue on? Who makes that decision, and how bold can you be, I guess?
I'll be completely honest and say that we probably don't have those type of conversations that we want to take horses on. That's not the way that we operate here at Star. It's very much that we would want to lay the most amount of turnover and the biggest bets in the big races in the strong markets. So laying a bet to take out a lot of money in the Clarence House, which would be the biggest race of the weekend and most probably the strongest market, are the type of bets that we want to lay. We wouldn't necessarily have the conversation say we want to take that favourite on, we want to take that favourite on. That's not the way that we operate, whereas some other bookies do, and each to their own. But it just completely depends on what the certain customers want to back, and it seemed on Saturday that it was Politologue that they wanted to be on. He's at 8-1 for the champion chase, whilst First Flow shortened into 12. Don't really understand the price differential there. I think First Flow just showed a lot of improvement. I know the ride probably won the race for him, but he had to go and actually win the race, even though David Bass was a great accompanying rider for him. Deputy Sawyer's probably one to touch on. He's now 20 poke for the race in March. So
yeah, I've spoken to Luke Tarr over the weekend. We're both in the Deputy Soy camp. Not that you could be overly encouraged by his comeback run, but I think it was better than maybe the superficial detail. But ultimately, you're Shakin Poursois backer. You're very, very happy with what happened this weekend. I mean, you've no concerns really, have you?
I'm not a Shakin Poursois backer, but I haven't bet anything in the race.
You think he's not going to get up the hill?
I'm not too sure. I'll be 100% honest and sit on the fence. I've got very little opinion on the race. He might he might completely outclass them, but First Flow would be the one that I would seek as a little bit of value at 12-1 at the moment anyway.
Well, it's interesting because you could give out about Bass and say, what are you doing taking on Politologue here? You're going to absolutely kill yourself. But he trusted in the horse, and he did destroy him. Like I thought Politologue, he looked like he was going to have the run of the race, and I'd agree with you on the price discrepancy. He is the up-and-comer in the race.
Yeah, completely. I don't get why there's 4 points between them. I just really don't get it. So he would definitely be the one that I would see as a bit of value there. Just another couple of races to touch on from Ascot. There was nothing to the size of Politologue at Ascot specifically. We'll move on to Haydock in a minute where there was. But in terms of Ascot, Dashel Drasher was a poor result for us in the Bet365 handicap chase. The second horse, Benny's King, would have been an even worse result. So Dashel Drasher was the lesser of two evils there. Another really good ride from Matt Griffiths, I thought, going from the front, and really got a nice tune out of him. The juvenile hurdle was an interesting watch. That was at the start of the card. We saw early money for Casalupi at 10-1, the Gary Moore horse. He was backed into 15-2 towards the off and was even shorter just before that. And almost textbook ride from Jamie Moore, went 104 in running. So we thought the early price punters got the money there, but was caught late by Tritonic, who was the 5-4 favourite. Tritonic was an even worse result for us, even though we saw the early money for the Gary Moore horse. Tritonic is now 16-1 for the Triumph Hurdle in March. But that is still dominated by Irish horses. I know you're sweet on a couple at the head of the market there, aren't you, Johnny?
Yeah, obviously Alan King thrives with 4-year-old hurdlers. I definitely respect him. It'll be interesting to see the Grade 1 at Leopardstown, the Dublin Racing Festival, because there are suggestions that it might not be as deep as it looks kind of at the moment with obviously Zana here and French Seal in the betting. But over to Haydock as well. Obviously the main news there was Bouverdare was beaten and was a satisfactory enough comeback perhaps. And obviously a good Grade 2 novice hurdle as well.
Well, was it a satisfactory comeback, do you think?
Yeah, satisfactory at best. Maybe the ground found him out on the back of his absence, and he's only been trained for one race. But I wouldn't be backing the champion hurdle.
No, me neither. We actually laid him for the race fairly heavily at 4 to 6. So some people obviously thought that he was going to make a winning reappearance coming back obviously from the long layoff. We did lay him pretty heavily, but not to the same levels as Politologue, as I just said. But it was certainly enough to get anyone's attention and certainly get our attention. We went 14 to 1 from 12 for the champion hurdle afterwards. The reason that we are joined bottom price is because in the week before he actually ran at the weekend, we laid him really heavily for the champion hurdle, and that was at 14 to 1. So he would be a solid six-figure liability for us going into the champion hurdle now. So we were pretty happy to see how it went at the weekend. I don't think he's going to come back. I can't see it at all personally. So not a bad bet to be laying, from my opinion, whatsoever there on Bouverdare. I also just want to touch on the Peter Marsh. I mean, this was probably joint race of the weekend with the Clarence House because of how good the Royale Pagaille was. He was just absolutely fantastic. Trounced his rivals by 16 lengths on the bridle.
We lost in that race.
Of course we did. We did do our money on the race, not to huge levels, but we did do our money on the favourite. He was the only loser in the book, fairly substantial. He's now 9 to 2 for the National Hunt Chase at Cheltenham. 6 to 1 for the Festival Novices Chase. It's now called, formerly known as the RSA, but we will continue to call it the RSA. But most of the interest was in the Gold Cup market, Johnny. Very interestingly, we went 12 to 1 after the race, and we had some clever people telling us that was too big. So then we went 11 to 1, and we still saw some warm money there. So we're now 9 to 1 for the Gold Cup. So after winning the Peter Marsh, obviously a handicap over at Haydock, and still in novice status as well, Royale Pagaille. He's a single figure price for the Gold Cup, and we saw plenty of warm people wanting to be on the Venetia Williams charge.
Yeah, that was a fantastic performance. We're going to finish up racing on the Pegasus World Cup.
We are indeed. Very, very briefly, we managed to avoid the favourite here, Nick's Go, who went on to win the race. Obviously featured at the Breeders' Cup beforehand, so it was a decent result for us there.
Yeah, let's get on to football. It was a really, really intriguing weekend. As we're recording this, reports coming in that Frank Lampard will likely lose his job today. Stay tuned with Star Sports. There'll likely be a market on his successor. It just never ends really with Chelsea. Lampard they actually win yesterday. Battered Luton, really won well in the end. But obviously the big talking point was Man United Liverpool. This game was fascinating on the betting front, Flynn, because after the team news came in, Liverpool were quite well backed. If you're watching the game in running, Manchester United were favourites for much of the game. They were actually favourites after about 10 minutes because they started well, but it was a real topsy-turvy clash. And I was having a chat with mates afterwards. It was like, what odds would you give me Liverpool not finishing in the first four? That's on the basis that they have a very tough run of games. But there were, apart from their defensive sort of mistakes, there were signs of encouragement yesterday. I presume it wasn't a bad result, or would it be right?
We did see a huge amount of action on the game, to be honest with you. It's
Man United Liverpool in the cup, and it's quite betting heat.
Yeah, but I think that's probably because of the 0-0 recently, and people were probably a little bit burnt from that result and didn't really want to go again on the game. They obviously bet there to be a lot of goals in the first game in the Premiership, and there wasn't. And then obviously that's ended up happening here in the FA Cup. Just in terms of the outright, City are now 7 to 4 for the FA Cup. United are 5 to 1, Chelsea 6 to 1, Spurs 8. And then we are 10 to 1 bar. We lay City at 5 to 2 and 9 to 4 fairly heavily in the week. So they will be the only losers for us now in the FA Cup. They play Swansea next. There's no real blockbuster fixtures coming up in the next round of the FA Cup. You'd probably say that Spurs will have the highest potential fixture if they end up playing Everton. So that's the FA Cup. Moving on to the Premier League, obviously we saw fixtures at the start of the week in the Premier League, and we've got loads of Premier League on this week. The outright markets, City are now 2 to 5 and 4 to 7, so shortened up again. After Liverpool obviously getting beat by Burnley. Man United are 11 to 2 from 13 to 2, so shortened up slightly. Liverpool 8 to 1 from 100 to 30, 8 to 1 Liverpool.
Unbelievable.
I did not think we'd see anywhere near that price this season for Liverpool.
If you're backing that 8-1, I think it's their next 5 or 6 games. Obviously, the Spurs one is. They also have Leicester and Man City's coming up. You need a good result again. You need them to beat Spurs effectively. You have a life with the De Bruyne situation. You have a bit of light.
Yeah.
8-1. I mean, after the Palace game, they were probably about 4-5, 4-6. I mean, incredible turn of events.
Yeah, and I think I'm right in saying that Liverpool probably have the best record against the so-called big six. I saw a graphic on Sky that they got 12 points from the big six games, which is more than any other team. So maybe Liverpool just struggled to break down the teams, the slightly lesser teams. No disrespect intended. When they do just stick so many men behind the ball and they struggle to break them down, whereas when it's more of a flowing game, they probably break the better teams down easier. Which may be the reason there. So, like you just said, a really interesting few games coming up. Chelsea are by far the biggest losers for us in the outright book, and that's obviously going to plan so far for us. We laid a lot of 14-1 pre-season and 8-1 during the season. Man United are also small losers for us in the outright market, but we're very happy to see Chelsea out to 100-1 now to win the league. And like you just said, likely that Frank Lampard's probably going to go. So do keep an eye on the Star Sports site and Twitter for the market when that does go up. If he obviously does go, Thomas Tuchel, I would have thought, will be towards the head of the market, and Rafa Benitez will probably feature, I would think.
Yeah, the only thing is for a manager taking that job, he knows that he's going to lose it probably at some stage. Like if all political careers end in failure, all Chelsea management roles end in basically being sacked, and that is a poison chalice. Getting on to the NFL, it's Mahomes versus Brady in the final of the Super Bowl, which is coming up next weekend. It was a pretty dramatic couple of games actually yesterday. I know you're not a massive NFL fan, but anyone who did stay up for the 2 games got banged for their buck.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that there were great results for us because we laid Green Bay Packers pretty heavily at 4-1 and 7-2. They turned into our biggest losers, but they're obviously out now and they're not in the Super Bowl. So we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Kansas City Chiefs in a couple of weeks in the Super Bowl. Buffalo Bills were also the only other loser in the book for us. So to get both of the bogeys beat and out of the Super Bowl is a good place to start. I would imagine we'll see some quite big bets flying around on the Super Bowl, and that could change the picture completely. But we're standing in good stead going into that game. I did just want to touch on the New Year's markets that we put out. They are now down, but we saw quite a bit of interest in Tom Brady at 22-1 to be the Super Bowl MVP. And obviously he is going to be a key feature with Patrick Mahomes, like you just said, when they go into the Super Bowl. So a couple of punters will think that they've got a lot of value there, and they obviously have got the value at 22-1. When this market comes out, you would imagine it'll be about 7-4 shot, maybe even slightly shorter to be the MVP. On the money line at the moment, Kansas are 3-5 and the Buccaneers are 11-8. So betting is on site for that, Johnny.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously been a really, really difficult year for America in terms of massive coronavirus deaths and political turmoil. And I think for gridiron fans, this is just a great fill-up for them to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. The fact that it is Brady against Mahomes. Mahomes comes back from a concussion worry the last day as well to obviously have a star performance, 3 touchdowns, something to look forward to, and can't wait myself. Let's get on to golf to conclude for the weekend. It was a bumper weekend. How was the golf?
The golf was pretty good for us. I mean, there was 2 real good tournaments on the European Tour. It was the Rolex event in Abu Dhabi. Tyrrell Hatton went on to win that pretty impressively. There was a real good final grouping of him and Rory McIlroy. Tyrrell Hatton was 12-1 for the off, and McIlroy was favourite. Like I just said, Tyrrell was a good winner in the pre-tournament book. Tommy Fleetwood was the one that we keep seeing punters coming from, which I just do not understand at all. He really struggles to win. He's had really good chances to win. He's missed short putts. I just wouldn't trust him getting over the line, but we'll continue to lay Tommy Fleetwood.
Am I right in saying Steve Palmer tipped up both winners in the racing post?
Yeah, he did. He had Tyrrell Hatton at 14-1, and then at a bigger price, Siwoo Kim, which we'll get on into in just a moment in the American Express. So, like I just said, in terms of the European Tour event, Tyrrell Hatton will be looked keenly upon for the Open Championship, I'd imagine, in July. He's now 25-1 with that, but I think there's plenty of juice in that price, I'd say. He just keeps winning at the moment. And going really, really well. Obviously won the BMW Championship as well at the end of last year. So in really, really good nick. And he's a similar price to Tommy Fleetwood for the Open, which I just do not understand. So I wouldn't put you off Tyrrell Hatton for the Open Championship. Moving on to the American tournament, as you just said, Steve Harbour put up the double this week, and Siwoo Kim won that at 23 under par. He was a very small loser in the book for us. Had Patrick Cantlay had won, who got in the clubhouse at 22 under par. He shot a final round of 61. He would have been a small winner for us in the book. So very a very small turnaround with them two switching places and see if we can get the job done. What I would say to keep an eye on for future events would be when we release prizes of the Players' Championship, which is at the start of March. So that's just before Cheltenham. Siwoo Kim has won there in 2017. He loves Pete Dye courses. It was a Pete Dye course at the weekend, and Sawgrass is also a Pete Dye course. They're very, very similar in the way that they set up, and he's obviously gone very well there in the past. He's sure to go well. I'd imagine anything around the 45, 50 to 1 chance, I wouldn't put you off at all.
Of course, it would be remiss of me not to mention our national icon, or otherwise Conor McGregor, who was beaten, Flynn. And you actually got up to watch this, you mad thing.
I did, yeah. 5 o'clock in the morning, the alarm was set, and I woke my girlfriend when I got up. But what can you do? It was actually worth getting up for. It was a pretty exciting fight, although it was only 2 rounds. We did lay Conor McGregor, who was 4-1 on at the off, and Dustin Poirier was 11-4. So it wasn't a bad result for us, Conor McGregor getting beat. But it was a bad result for Dana White. Obviously, he wanted him to win and be impressive so he could set up a fight with Khabib for the lightweight title. But it looks like Khabib will be walking away from the sport now. And Dustin Poirier will go on to fight for the vacant title, you would think. We have got a mark on site I just wanted to quickly talk about, which is who will Conor McGregor fight next. We priced up Nate Diaz at 9-4 favourite here. So for the Nate Diaz trilogy, obviously it's 1-1 in that series. Dustin Poirier, again, another trilogy rematch. It's a 1-1 between them two after Poirier beating him at the weekend. Justin Gaethje is also 5-1. Charles Oliveira, who's a fantastic contender, is 8-1. Manny Pacquiao, so if he's going to go back into the boxing sphere rather than UFC, is 8-1. Tony Ferguson also 8-1, and then we are 12-1 par. So just a market, a bit of a fun novelty market to get stuck into there in regards to Conor McGregor after the fight of the weekend.
Week ahead, what are we looking at? Obviously, Liverpool Spurs is going to take up a lot of punters' interest, but a lot of my mates are reeling, Flynn. I got to say, they've started the year poorly on the punting front. It could do with some salvation. Yeah,
there's plenty to get stuck into this week. We've seen quite a few horse race meets get called off due to the terrible weather, but hopefully Cheltenham's on this weekend. We've got Trials Day at the weekend. Obviously, we'll get decks coming through today for that. So
we also have Ireland as well, in the sense of Thurles being rearranged and Goran with the Thyestes. It's actually cracking and quite full meetings coming up in Ireland this week. So plenty to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. Plenty to get stuck into, and some real good quality racing. Obviously, we did see good quality racing over the weekend, but some real Cheltenham clues will be released this week, which is really good to see. And like you just said, the midweek football and weekend football, we've got Spurs versus Liverpool. Is that battle for 4th place? It might be for your mob now, I'd say, Johnny. And obviously the weekend Premier League games, like I just said. So plenty to get stuck into this week.
You go from a situation of Liverpool looking like they're almost in an unassailable condition or position to Klopp basically saying the top 4 is now the priority. What a game.
I know. Tell me about it. It's all changed.
That was Trader Chat with Johnny Ward and Flynn Goward. We'll have plenty more on Star Sports this week, and we'll be back with Flynn next week.